Hi there. Bishop Craig Bergland coming to you again with another video blog. I'm glad to be with you today as I record this. It is Sunday, January 16th. Yesterday, my colleague, the Reverend Canon Jeffrey Montoya, and I and my wife Erin journeyed to Oak Park, Illinois, in the greater Chicago area for the ordination of Juby Dutcher as a deacon in the Universal Anglican Church. This was an historic moment for us as church, as Juby is our first transgendered woman clergy person. And it was not just your everyday ordination. It was indeed extremely special to me, and I know to Father Jeffrey as well, to my wife Erin, and I know to Juby and all the people gathered there. You see, we're a fortunate church community. We have the privilege and the duty, the privilege of being radically inclusive and the duty to be radically inclusive. And while there's a lot of organizations that talk about that, and I would suggest play at that, we've been fortunate enough to be offered many, many opportunities to live that. And we've also been offered the opportunity to live it with people who are eminently qualified. You know, it occurs to me that if one wanted to appear to be radically inclusive, one could probably go around and find people here or there that fit into many, many categories of diversity and go ahead and ordain them and say that we have a church that's diverse. And you'd be half right. You'd have a group of people who were diverse, but whether or not they were qualified to tend to the needs of the spiritual needs of those they served would be very much in question. And yet I've been fortunate enough, for reasons that are quite frankly beyond my understanding, to meet folks who are exceptional human beings, who have a love of other human beings, a passion for service and spirituality, and they also happen to be a pretty diverse group of people. It's a rare privilege. I dare say that while many, many, many churches talk about everybody being welcome, there are very few indeed that live it in the way the body that I'm privileged to lead and be one of the co-founders of, the Universal Anglican Church, does. At the same time, we recognize whenever we talk about church that 80% of you turn off. And of those of you who identify as Christians, 3 out of 4 of you don't go there on a regular basis. And so we're constantly looking for ways to meet your spiritual needs in a way that works for you. I often use the analogy of an unfortunate experience that I had when I was much younger at a Hardees in Dubuque, Iowa. I love you in Dubuque, Iowa, if you're listening or watching. This isn't a knock on you and Hardees. I love you people. I can eat in your restaurants again, but let me tell you, back around 1983, I was a field service engineer for a now defunct diagnostic ultrasound company. And one of my accounts was in Dubuque, Iowa. I lived in Rockford, Illinois at the time. And if you've ever driven to Dubuque from Illinois, you know that you drive across a bridge across the Mississippi River. Now, I haven't been in Dubuque in literally decades, so I don't even know if the Hardees is still there. But it used to be, as you came across this bridge, you got to a Hardees. And very often, I would leave home very early in the morning with a huge cup of coffee, but not having eaten anything. And there really wasn't much, to be quite honest, between Rockford and Dubuque. There was in Freeport, perhaps there might have been a fast food place, I don't remember. But very often I went through there earlier than anything would have been open back in those days. And so as I got into Dubuque, I'd often stop at the Hardees. I stopped one day at the Hardees and had something to eat. I think it was a cheeseburger, so maybe it was a little later in the day. And let me tell you, within an hour, I was so violently ill that there are not words to explain it, and so I won't even try. It's probably better that I don't if you're eating right now while you watch this. And every time I went to Hardees, I went to Dubuque after that, and I'd cross that bridge, I'd get a whiff of that Hardees smell coming out through the exhausts for the kitchen, and it would just turn my stomach. I'm happy to report that today, some 27 years later, I'm over it. I don't know exactly when I got over it, but it took some years. I think that's a pretty apt metaphor for what most of the world feels about Christianity. I think when you walk into a church, having had a negative experience there, or even just had a neutral but rather boring experience there, which might not be especially negative, but wasn't especially positive either, I think you smell that Hardees. And there's something about it that no matter how we dress it up, no matter how we paint the walls or rearrange the furniture, it still smells like Hardees. And so, what we're dedicated to in the Universal Anglican Church and in the Christ and Light movement, which I co-founded with my colleague and friend, Bishop-elect Susan Gaines of Austin, Texas, we are trying to find new ways to meet your spiritual needs. And one of the most important ways I think we can do that is collect a diverse group of clergy who, for lack of a better way to describe this, don't fit the mold. A diverse enough group of clergy that you'll feel comfortable relating to them. A group of clergy who, by tradition, wear clerical collars, but at other times come to you in a hoodie with a Buddhist mala around their neck, expressing who we really are in a way that perhaps isn't quite as off-putting as the clerical collar can be. A group of folks who may at times appear to be, as I said yesterday in my sermon, company boys and girls, but who really aren't. People who have lived life with all of its wonderful, amazing, rewarding qualities, and with all of its occasionally very disappointing, painful qualities. As an aside, it's interesting that we very often say that we're really yearning for a life without any negatives, without a downside, and yet if we really had that life, we wouldn't really fully appreciate the upside. I think sometimes we need to be careful about what we're asking for. But as this diverse group of clergy people, this group of spiritual teachers, coming from many different places and speaking to many different needs, it's our sincere hope that we can become fellow travelers with you on your spiritual journey. That we might, in some ways, function as spirit guides, spiritual directors, if you will, if you don't like that term, spiritual guides, spiritual companions, transition companions, as people who are there for you in the way you need us to be there for you. It strikes me very often that so much of the church has, in fact, claimed to be an institution of service, while instead being very much an institution of dictating to you, the people we claim that we're going to serve, the terms and conditions of how we'll do that. And it strikes us that that's not a model that the Jesus whom we claim to follow would be very appreciative of, a model that he used himself or that he would endorse. So, in mentioning all this today in the form of a video blog, I really have two purposes. The first is to ask your prayers, your thoughts for the ministry of Juby Dutcher, that she might feel your love and support lifting her up and carrying her along throughout her ministry. She is an exceptional human being. and also that you might be a little more exposed to who we are as church. That you might know that there's a group of folk out there ready and willing to serve you and looking at ways and looking for ways to do it that are definitely outside the box. That don't smell like that fast food place that made you more than a little nauseous the last time you entered it, but instead might breathe fresh air into your spiritual journey, whatever that journey entails. You know, I'm a person who believes that there is one God, but that God is known by many different names, that God is worshipped or prayed to and or celebrated in many different ways. And all of those differences are really culturally determined factors. There's something about being a human being that senses that the transcendent surrounds us. I believe the most obvious way that we encounter that in this life is through relationship one with the other. That if you want to find God, make a friend. And feel that connection and the draw towards relationship and interrelatedness. Because the truth is, there really are only 6 degrees of separation. And in this modern world, we all need each other. So I believe that's where the divine's encountered, and regardless of what your name for God is, even if you say that your name does not constitute God, whatever it is that's the focal point of your spiritual life is for you a source of transcendence. And we'd love to discuss that with you. We believe in existing in the creative tension that is naturally formed when people of diverse opinion and diverse experience gather. If you'd like to learn more, I'd encourage you to visit the Christ and Light website at christandlight.org, and also check out the Universal Anglican Church website at theuac.net. I'm always available to you by emailing christandlight@gmail.com. I'm Bishop Bergland. Until next time, namaste.